Your soulmate's family secretly talked about you. What they decided will surprise you. My beloved child. Your soulmate's family talked about you when they were certain you would never hear a word of it. The conversation happened behind a closed door, late enough that no one expected interruptions. At first, your soulmate wasn't even supposed to be part of it. Their name came up quietly, followed by yours, and suddenly the entire room changed. One person leaned forward and asked the question everyone had apparently been avoiding: "Are we sure this person understands how serious this has become?" Your soulmate heard those words from the hallway and froze. They expected criticism. Maybe rejection. Maybe someone demanding that they walk away from you completely. But then an older family member placed something on the table that nobody expected to see. It was connected to you. And the moment your soulmate recognized it, they realized this secret conversation had started long before that night. What followed wasn't an argument. That was the strange part. Instead, each family member began revealing what they had quietly noticed about you: the way your soulmate's mood changed when your name appeared on their phone, how they defended you even when you weren't there, and how every attempt to imagine a future without you seemed to leave them unsettled. Then someone admitted they had deliberately tested your soulmate weeks earlier by suggesting they move on. Your soulmate had refused immediately. No hesitation. But there was another detail they didn't know. One member of the family had secretly spoken to someone who knew more about your connection than anyone in that room realized. Don't skip, because this is where the conversation took an unexpected turn. Instead of deciding whether you belonged in your soulmate's future, the family began discussing something far more serious: whether they had been wrong about you from the beginning. Then came the decision. But before anyone said it aloud, your soulmate stepped into the room and asked, "What exactly are you planning?" Silence. Nobody expected them to be listening. The oldest person at the table looked directly at your soulmate and said, "We were trying to decide when to tell you." Tell them what? Your soulmate's heart started racing because the object on the table suddenly made sense. The family hadn't gathered to push you away. They had gathered because something had happened that changed how they saw you, and now they wanted to do something your soulmate never believed they would agree to. But one family member still had doubts, and before the final decision could be made, that person revealed a private detail about you that made your soulmate whisper, "How did you find out about that?" The answer was even more surprising, because someone close to the family had been quietly watching this situation unfold for months. The room became painfully quiet after that question. Your soulmate stared at the family member who had revealed the private detail, waiting for an explanation. Finally, they admitted that months earlier, someone close to the family had noticed something unusual: whenever your soulmate was struggling, your presence seemed to change them. Not because you magically solved everything, but because you made them more honest about what they wanted. The family had watched your soulmate stop pretending, stop settling, and start making decisions they had been afraid to make for years. Still, one person at the table wasn't convinced. "What if this ends badly?" they asked. Your soulmate immediately answered, "Then let me take that risk." But what happened next caught everyone off guard, because the oldest family member quietly said, "That's exactly why we called this meeting." Your soulmate expected another warning. Instead, The family admitted they had been discussing whether it was finally time to stop standing in the way. Some of them had judged you without knowing you. Others had questioned your intentions because they were afraid your soulmate would get hurt again. But now they were beginning to understand something important. Keeping the two of you apart might cause more pain than allowing the relationship to unfold naturally. Then came another revelation. One family member confessed that they had recently seen your soulmate preparing a message for you, deleting it, rewriting it, and finally putting the phone away without sending anything. You looked terrified, they said. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. Everyone wanted to know what that message contained, but your soulmate refused to explain, until someone asked one simple question that broke through every defense: "Are you still in love with them?" Your soulmate didn't answer immediately. They didn't need to. Their expression told the room everything. Then, almost under their breath, they admitted, "I never stopped." That confession changed the conversation completely. The family finally made their decision. They would no longer pressure your soulmate to forget you, and they wanted to give this connection a real chance instead of judging it from the outside. But there was one condition, not for you, but for your soulmate. They had to stop hiding behind fear and finally tell you the truth about what had happened inside that family. Stay till the end, because your soulmate agreed. They reached for their phone right there at the table, opened your conversation, and began typing the message they had been afraid to send. But before they could finish, another family member stopped them and said, "Before you tell them anything, there's one more secret they deserve to know." Your soulmate slowly lowered the phone. The family member who had stopped them looked uncomfortable, as though they had carried this secret for far too long. Then they admitted something nobody else at the table knew. Months ago, when tension around your connection was at its worst, someone in the family had quietly encouraged your soulmate to distance themselves from you. Not because you had done something wrong, but because they were afraid of how deeply your soulmate had fallen for you. They believed creating distance would protect everyone from disappointment. Your soulmate's face changed instantly. Suddenly, certain unanswered messages, canceled plans, and confusing moments from the past looked completely different. "So you knew?" your soulmate asked. The person nodded. But that wasn't the entire confession. There had been one specific conversation about you that your soulmate had never been told about. The family member explained that after pushing your soulmate away from you, they began noticing the consequences. Your soulmate became quieter. Family dinners felt different. Even when they smiled, something seemed missing. That was when doubt began creeping in. Had the family protected your soulmate, or interfered with something genuine? Eventually, the same person who had questioned you started asking others what they truly knew about you. The answer surprised them. Nobody could point to some terrible thing you had done. Most of their concerns had been assumptions, fears, and stories they had created before giving you a fair chance. Then the family member looked directly at your soulmate and said, "I think we made you afraid of the person you actually wanted." Your soulmate swallowed hard, because there was still one question nobody had answered: why admit all of this now? That answer came from the person sitting silently at the end of the table. They revealed that your soulmate had recently made a decision the family hadn't expected. They were preparing to make a major change in their life, and before doing it, they had mentioned you. Not casually. Your name was connected to what they wanted their future to become. That was why the secret family meeting had happened. They realized they could either keep controlling the situation or finally support your soulmate's choice. And they chose something that shocked even your soulmate. They wanted to meet you properly, without judgment, without old assumptions, and without trying to control the outcome. Your soulmate stared at them in disbelief. But before relief could settle in, the oldest family member added, "There's another reason we want them here." Then they pulled a sealed envelope from beneath the papers on the table, and your name was written across the front. The envelope changed everything. Your soulmate reached toward it, but the oldest family member pulled it back and said, "This isn't yours to open." Your name was handwritten across the front, and underneath it was a date from several months earlier, before this secret family meeting, before the arguments had softened, before anyone admitted they might have misjudged you. Your soulmate demanded to know who wrote it. The answer surprised them. It came from the very family member who had once been most determined to keep distance between you. Inside was something they had written after realizing their interference may have caused unnecessary pain. They had planned to give it to you someday, but fear kept stopping them. Now the family had decided that if you were going to hear the truth, you deserved all of it, not a carefully edited version designed to make everyone look innocent. Your soulmate's emotions shifted from confusion to frustration. "So while I thought they were pulling away from me, we were both being influenced by things neither of us understood?" Nobody answered immediately. That silence was enough. Your soulmate finally understood why certain moments between you had felt unfinished, why conversations had ended before the important words were spoken, and why every attempt to move forward seemed to collide with another invisible obstacle. But then the family revealed something even more unexpected. They hadn't only decided to stop interfering. They wanted your soulmate to contact you before any more time disappeared. One person even said, "If this person matters enough that you still speak about them after everything, then maybe we need to stop asking why you can't forget them and start asking why you should." Those words hit your soulmate harder than anyone expected. For so long, they had prepared themselves to defend you. Now the same people they feared disappointing were telling them to stop running. Your soulmate picked up the phone again, but this time they didn't type immediately. They looked at the unopened envelope and asked whether you should hear the family's confession first or their own. Because your soulmate had something to admit to, something they had hidden even from the people sitting around that table. Stay till the end, because when they finally revealed it, the family realized this connection had gone much further than they knew. Your soulmate had already made a private promise involving you and their future. And just as they began explaining what that promise was, one person at the table suddenly whispered, "Wait, does that mean you already made the decision?" Your soulmate didn't deny it. They looked around the table and finally admitted that weeks earlier, during one of those quiet nights when missing you became impossible to ignore, they had made a private decision. If another genuine opportunity came to speak with you, they would stop running from the conversation. No more letting family opinions, old fears, or imagined outcomes decide what happened between you. They had even written down what they wanted to say because they were afraid emotion would erase the words when the moment arrived. But there was one line they had never shown anyone: "If you still have space for me in your life, I want to rebuild this honestly." The family went silent. The person who had once opposed you most strongly looked down at the sealed envelope, realizing their interference had nearly prevented that sentence from ever reaching you. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of warning your soulmate to slow down, that family member pushed the envelope across the table and said, "Then don't make them wait because of us anymore." Your soulmate stared at them, almost suspicious of the sudden change. Why now? Why after all the resistance? The answer was painfully simple. They had watched your soulmate try to move forward without you, and every attempt looked more like avoidance than healing. They had also realized that protecting someone doesn't mean controlling every emotional risk they take. So the family's surprising decision became clearer: they weren't merely giving approval. They were willing to acknowledge their mistakes directly to you if necessary. But just when your soulmate thought the hardest part was over, another relative admitted there was still something the family had discussed before your soulmate entered the room, something involving a possible meeting with you. They had already talked about inviting you to a small family gathering. Not to interrogate you. Not to test you. They wanted the chance to meet the person they had spent so much time discussing without truly knowing. Your soulmate couldn't believe it. Months earlier, some of these same people could barely hear your name without becoming uncomfortable. Now they were considering opening their door to you. But your soulmate immediately asked the question that mattered most. What if they don't want anything to do with us after everything? Nobody had an easy answer. Then the oldest family member placed the envelope directly into your soulmate's hands and said, "That choice belongs to them." Your soulmate looked at your name, took a slow breath, and unlocked their phone. This time, they actually began sending the message, but the first sentence they wrote wasn't, "I miss you." It was something far more serious. The first sentence was simple. "There's something my family and I owe you the truth about." Your soulmate stared at those words before pressing send. The message went through, and suddenly everyone around the table understood there was no taking it back. Your soulmate continued typing, explaining that the family had talked about you privately, that assumptions had been made, and that some of those assumptions had influenced decisions you never fully understood. But they refused to blame everything on their relatives. "I allowed fear to make choices for me too," they wrote. That admission mattered because your soulmate wanted you to hear accountability, not excuses. Then they stopped typing. There was one final truth they still couldn't put into a message: the real reason your name had remained part of their future even when they tried convincing themselves otherwise. Your soulmate finally told the family what that reason was. During the months of distance, they had imagined several different futures. Moving somewhere new, meeting someone else, starting over completely. Yet whenever those possibilities became real, something felt unfinished. Not because they believed life couldn't continue without you, but because they knew they had never given your connection an honest chance without outside pressure shaping it. That realization had become impossible to ignore. The family listened differently now. No arguments. No warnings. Then the relative who had once resisted you most said something your soulmate never expected: "If they give you another chance, don't waste it trying to defend us." Listen to what they went through. Those words changed the mood completely, because this was no longer about getting the family's approval. It was about whether you would even want to reopen the door. Then your soulmate's phone moved slightly against the table. Everyone noticed. A notification had appeared. For one breathless second, nobody spoke. Your soulmate reached for the phone, but before opening anything, they looked at the sealed envelope still resting beside them. Whatever happened next, they knew two conversations were waiting, the family's confession and their own. Something huge was waiting for you, because the family had made one final decision while your soulmate was sending that message. If you agreed to meet, they would not hide what they had done. They would tell you directly. No excuses. No carefully rewritten history. But when your soulmate finally looked at the notification, their expression changed so suddenly that the oldest family member stood up and asked, "What happened?" Your soulmate stared at the screen and whispered, "I wasn't expecting this." What appeared on that screen wasn't the response your soulmate had been preparing themselves for. It was a message connected to you, but the words made them stop completely. "Before we talk, I need you to answer one thing honestly." Your soulmate read it twice. Around the table, nobody dared interrupt. Then the question appeared, had your soulmate ever truly wanted distance from you, or had they simply allowed everyone else's fears to become their own? That question went straight through every excuse they had been carrying. Your soulmate could have blamed the family. They could have explained every misunderstanding. Instead, they typed, "I was afraid, and I let that fear hurt something I cared about." Then they added the sentence they had avoided for months, "But losing you was never what I wanted." The family watched your soulmate finally speak without asking anyone's permission. And strangely, that became the moment their decision felt real. The oldest relative took the sealed envelope back and said it should only be given to you face to face, if you chose to come. Another family member offered to leave the gathering entirely if their presence would make you uncomfortable. Even the person who had judged you most admitted, "They don't owe us forgiveness just because we finally understand." Your soulmate hadn't expected that. This wasn't the family suddenly pretending everything had always been perfect. They were acknowledging that trust would have to be earned. Then another message arrived. Your soulmate opened it immediately. And this time, their eyes filled with emotion. You hadn't promised reconciliation. You hadn't erased the past. But you had left one possibility open, a conversation. That small opening changed the entire room. Your soulmate looked at the people who had secretly gathered to discuss you and realized the final decision no longer belonged to them. They could approve, apologize, step aside, or offer support. But what happened between you and your soulmate had to be decided by the two people actually living it. Your soulmate stood, took the envelope, and said, "Then I'm going to tell them everything." But before leaving, the family member who had written it stopped them once more. Their voice shook as they revealed there was something inside that envelope your soulmate didn't know about either. It wasn't only an apology. There was a second page written after the family meeting began, containing the exact decision they had reached about you, and when your soulmate heard what they had written at the bottom, they simply stared back in disbelief. Your soulmate finally asked, "What did you write?" The family member hesitated, then opened the envelope and unfolded the second page. At the bottom was one sentence nobody expected: "If they choose each other again, we will not stand between them." Your soulmate went completely still. After months of tension, doubts, and private opinions, the family had reached the opposite decision from the one your soulmate feared. They weren't demanding that you prove yourself. They weren't creating another test. They were stepping aside. More importantly, they were willing to admit that some of their earlier judgments had come from fear rather than facts. Your soulmate looked around the table and asked, "You all agreed to this?" One by one, they nodded. But the oldest relative added something important: their approval wasn't permission. Your soulmate didn't need